EPF has estimated that 78% of Malaysians, this number over here, right, don't have enough money for retirement, right? That's close to 80% don't have enough money for their retirement. That's a scary number. The next one, this is quite scary. It says that 50% of people will finish their EPF money within 5 years. And this data, the final one over here, this one is really scary. It says 68% of people at the age of 54 has 50K and below, right? So let us think about this number, right? If someone actually has 50K, right, before they retire, so retirement age is about 55, right? And this person actually has 50K upon retiring, right? And assuming if we spend maybe 5,000 ringgit per month, lah, right? 50K can only last 10 months only, right? 5,000 per month. Living in Kuala Lumpur is very low, lah, basically, right? After paying for our utilities, after paying for our electricity, after paying for our food, after paying for our car and our house and our bills, right? 5,000 ringgit is not that much, right? And when looking at this data given by EPF, right, which says 68% of people that has money in the EPF, right, at the age of 54, they realize that many of these people has 50K below, right? So it's no wonder that a lot of Malaysians find it very, very difficult to retire in this day and age, right? That's the first data. I think the next data point, which I found really interesting, I'm going to share with you guys, right? This one, it's, I found this really, really interesting and I found this really insightful. So it says here 90% of EPF members have a loan commitment, right? So actually the debt, I want to call it the debt trap lah, basically, right? Normally when someone actually finish school, right up to 30 years old, one of the things that they have is the car lah, right? Of course, I mean, when you're younger, you want to have a car, right? This is like freedom, right? I mean, like you want to travel back and forth, you know, you want to just be out of the house, you want to just go see friends, travel around the country, you know. Aside from that, some people actually take, a study loan, right? This could be in the form of PTPTN or any other loans, right? So this is the second loan, right? And the third and the most scary thing over here, this is a personal loan. Right now, we can see more and more younger people getting bankrupt. And part of the reasons why is that they cannot, pay for their monthly, they don't have enough money to pay for their monthly expenses and for their loans, right? So what they have to do is they have to take a personal loan in order for them to start paying their monthly expenses, right? So that's one of the reasons why there was this study that says that more and more younger Malaysians are going bankrupt, so to speak. Okay, so the next stage in life, this is between the ages of 30 to 40. This is after the person maybe gets married, right? And he's actually, he's getting a bit more money, right? And he's working as a professional, right? And this is when he's earning quite a fair bit of money, right? And we can see that right now, he doesn't have his PTPTN loan or he does not have his study loan. That being said, a 40-year-old will have his housing loan. And this is one of the biggest commitments someone will take, right? On top of that, he has his car. And again, you can see this thing. This is the personal loan, right? So even people between the ages of 30 to 40 years old, right? Despite them earning more than what they used to earn when they are in the 20 to 30 age region, right? But we have to also understand their lifestyle has also, has also changed, so to speak, right? So right now, they not only have a car, but they also have a house, right? And right now, since they, don't have enough money to actually pay for their monthly expenses and also their loans, a lot are taking personal loans. You can actually see the personal loan numbers, right? Between 30 to 40, it actually increased over here. The next stage in life, this is 40 to 50. I think this is some people is going to, I guess, almost going to retire lah, because most people actually retire by 55, right? Over here, right, you can see that the car and the house. And I'm sure some of you will be thinking lah, wait a minute, after 9 years, all right, after certain number of years, right, our car has been fully paid. But we have to remember, right, over here, many people will opt to buy 2 or 3 cars, right? And this would maybe put this particular person lah in another car commitment, right? So even though this person is between 40 to 50, right? The question is, how come, in all stages in life, the car loan is always there with the person? As I mentioned, at this particular age, he probably has maybe wife and maybe some of his kids are studying in university, right? And maybe they're going to have some cars. And this is where the car loans for not only himself, but maybe his kids or his wife also is there. Not only that, like I said, he has his housing loan, right? At this point in time, he still has to pay for his house. And like I said, this is a scary part where the personal loans are still there. So basically what this basically means is that still the salary is still not enough after paying for the car, after paying for the house, and after paying for the monthly expenses, he still has to take a personal loan, right? And then the final stage in life, right? This is when someone is at retirement age lah. This is between so the person will retire by 55, right? If he's lucky enough, he can work to 60, right? But over here we can see that there is a housing loan, right? This is the tail end of the housing loan, and this is the tail end for the car loans, right? Instead of personal loans, so the question is, why isn't this guy taking a personal loan? This is in exchange for credit card loans, lah, basically. The thing with personal loans is, I think you can only take it while we're working. Credit card loans are a bit more lenient lah, in that sense. But credit card loans, mind all of you guys lah, are very expensive, right? So over here, this is let me just turn it over here. So this is the stages where us Malaysians, right, I notice more and more, right? We have to need loans in order for us to survive, right? After paying for our debt, after paying for our keperluan asas or our basic needs, right? Many people cannot survive, right? And that's data point number 2 lah, right? And data point number 3, I've been saying this over and over and over again, right? We also have to look at inflation, right? And I brought this up in my previous episode where I talked a little bit about this phenomena where there's this little joke which is going around, right? A light-hearted joke, which is Hari Raya yang paling terpokai, right? Which basically means that this Raya, a lot of people actually spent more than they budget for, right? In fact, a lot of them actually had in terms of the spending patterns, they spent what they used to do for the past 3 or 4 years. In fact, they're just buying the same things, right? But that being said, despite them buying the same items like what they do last year or 2 years ago, the expenses is much higher, right? And I give you a couple of reasons, right? Right now with local rice being harder to find, what's happening is that a lot of people have to buy imported rice, right? And when people have to buy imported rice, what tends to happen is that it's expensive lah. When you want to make things like your lemang and ketupat, right? When we cannot find local rice, which costs 26 ringgit per bag, right now it's already 40 to 50 ringgit per bag, right? The cost of getting gas and also cooking Hari Raya food is a bit more expensive. That's number 1. Number 2, in terms of even our kuih raya also, right? If you look at our sugar and also our tepung, it's getting more and more expensive. So therefore, like I said, what we used to, inviting guests is part of Hari Raya. In fact, even buying new clothes is part of Hari Raya. we did almost everything the same, right? But that being said, this raya was a bit more expensive. And as I mentioned, if you look at the price of rice, price of flour, price of sugar also is very expensive. I think right now the more concerning part is this lah, right? Prices of fuel, right? What will happen if the prices of fuel were to, or the price ceiling for fuel were to be taken away, right? If the price ceiling for fuel is going to be taken away, what's going to happen is that fuel prices has the ability to move up. And as we know, right now there is certain conflicts which are happening around the world, right? And with that, we can see that crude oil prices, global crude oil prices, has been getting more and more expensive, right? So, all in all, right, if we were to look at the data, right, it shows that 50% of Malaysians or 50% of EPF members tend to finish their money in the first 5 years, right? The second data point is 80% of EPF members just do not have enough money saved up. And this is coming from EPF per se, right? And then the next data that we saw is, at every stage of a Malaysian's life or every stage of a Malaysian's life in his 20s, he has a certain number of loans, right? As we can see, his PTPTN, his car loans, and also his personal loans, right? That's in his 20s. In his 30s, this is where he buys his first car, right? He buys his first house, right? And that is a very, very big commitment. And then in his 40s, right? Have kids, and then also have a wife, right? And sometimes they want maybe 2 cars. And honestly, the public transportation system over in Kuala Lumpur has been improving, right? I mean, it has been improving. But that being said, it's not to a degree where, like for me, I live somewhere in Selangor, and if I want to go somewhere in Selangor, right, the web of the public transportation, sometimes it does not cover that many areas yet, you see. So even though I want to take public transportation, it's still very difficult. And I know out of 10 of my friends going back and forth the office, right, a good five people or 50% of my friends actually use their own private transportation. They would opt not to use public transportation, right? Me, however, like I always told you guys, if you guys can use public transportation, use public transportation. I tried to use public transportation, and quite honestly, if I drive, it's going to take me maybe 30 or 40 minutes. If I take the public transportation, it's going to take me even more time. Sometimes it's maybe double the time, right? The whole thing of it all is I need to make an interchange in the middle of the city, right? Sometimes we have to just go in the middle of the city and then patah balik, or make a U-turn to actually reach our destination. So, quite honestly, right, not having a car in Kuala Lumpur, it could be a bit challenging. And I can see why a lot of people actually see it as a must to actually own a car, right? And that's one of the reasons why certain families actually have 2 or 3 cars, right? I think all in all, the big question is, we already seen all the data. We know that the inflation is there. And the next question is, if the price ceilings for fuel is going to be taken away, what's going to happen if fuel prices were to go up? Is it going to impact other things, right? And the answer to that is definitely yes. The whole thing of it all is an example. If you consume like rice, right, and also fish and also vegetables, right, and say we stay in somewhere in Kuala Lumpur, right, in order for us to get the rice, it has to come from the farms, the paddy farms in Kedah, right? So from the paddy farms in Kedah, they need to go to the rice mills for it to be processed in the rice mills. And then from there, it needs to go to the wholesalers, where the wholesalers will keep all of the stock, right? And then from the wholesalers, it goes to the retailers, right? So maybe it goes to the bigger retailers in Selangor. And from the bigger retailers in Selangor, then it'll go to the smaller shops, right? So all in all, right, if prices of fuels were to go up, what's going to happen is that every touch point where the rice moves, right, from the farm to the mill, from the farm to the mills, and then from the mills to the wholesalers, from the wholesaler to the retailer, and then from the retailer to smaller retailers, and from the smaller retailers to us, right? It goes through many rounds, and if fuel prices actually goes up by 10-20%, right? Every touch point is going to have the inflation. So I guess there was I'm sure some of you guys are even asking why is it when prices of fuel goes up, prices of roti canai goes up, right? And that's basically why, right? They call the fuel prices as, or an increase in fuel price would also impact almost everything, and everything that we consume, everything that we drink will actually go through some form of transportation, right? So with right now, I think to conclude lah, right now we can see that a lot of people cannot retire comfortably. Number two, we can see that one of the top reasons is a lot of people are actually struggling with debt, right? The third thing is with inflation, right? What can we do, right? So as a financial channel, I would definitely say this, always look towards saving, right? And the whole thing of it all is, how do we save, right? There's this particular budgeting formula, which is the 50-30-20 formula, right? Where it says, for every time when we get our gaji, 50% should be used for our needs. So our needs will be things for like our electricity, our water, our rental, our transportation, our fuel. Those are basic needs, basically, right? So 50%. So if we earn about maybe 2,000, right? So 50% of 2,000 is 1,000. So 1,000 can only be used for rental, transport, food, so on and so forth, right? And then 30% of that 2,000, which is 600 ringgit, can be used for our wants, right? Or for our leisure activity, right? So this one could be things like going to a restaurant, going for a movie, so on and so forth. And 20% is used for our savings, right? 20% of 2,000 is 400 ringgit is for our savings, right? Although this budgeting system is very simple to keep off top of our head, but I don't quite think it's realistic, right? Honestly, 1,000 ringgit in Kuala Lumpur for rental, food, electricity, and transportation, it seems like a stretch to me, basically, right? And that's one of the reasons why I do not like the 50-30-20. I feel it is very outdated, right? So this is one thing which I always tell my students, even if they are in their 20s, even if they're in their 30s, 40s, so on and so forth, right? I keep telling them this, I said 20% could be a very high figure, right? I said always save at a level they're comfortable with, right? If you cannot save 20%, save 10%. If you cannot save 10%, save 5%, right? If you cannot do that, then maybe save 20 ringgit per day, right? 20 ringgit per day. And the whole thing of it all is like building a muscle, right? When we get better at building a muscle, right, we will improve, right? So once we start saving 20 ringgit per day, right? And then after that, look towards improving that, right? That's tip number one. Tip number two is always write down our expenses, right? By writing down our expenses, we will know, we will have awareness, right? I think one of the reasons why a lot of people tend to overspend, or I guess overeat, is that we don't have an awareness of what we do, right? Only by writing things down, we have an awareness, right? And by having an awareness, then we can take action, right? So after writing all our expenses, right, we need to know whether these are wants or needs. As I mentioned to you, wants are nice to have, right? Needs are things that we really need on a daily basis, right? So if there are expenses like wants, as I mentioned, going to a nice restaurant, going to a movie, maybe going to travel, right? If we have those on our expenses, right, what I would suggest to do is maybe start reducing the expenses which are labeled as wants, right? Maybe start reducing it by 2%, and then maybe 3%, and maybe 5%, 10%. And maybe if you're really disciplined, you can actually cancel that particular expense, right? And honestly, if you start creating good habits, you start saving, right? You start building a muscle, you get better and better for it, right? I think all in all, what I'm trying to say is it's very, very possible to retire living in Kuala Lumpur. It is very, very possible, I feel like, right? But we need to be financially savvy lah right now, right? We need to start saving right now, right? And we also need to take into consideration inflation, right? And beyond that, beyond saving, I will also suggest to invest. Investing, it is so pivotal, right? The whole thing of it all is even me, right? When I actually lost my job, lah, basically during the whole VSS, right? During the whole pandemic, what really helped me stay sane, lah, basically, was that I had some recurring income from my other from my other assets, right? So by having all of this recurring income, this enabled me to actually cushion the financial shock, right? So I think over here, what I will highly suggest, this is how I started my investment lah, right? Is start with something which you can afford, right? And start with something very, very safe, right? I don't think I've spoken about this, right? But I think in this video, I will just share with you what type of assets I would strongly lean towards lah, basically, right? So like I said, when you first start investments, you are going to make a lot of mistakes. It's very, very common. When you start doing anything new, it's very, very easy. I mean, it's very common to make mistakes, right? So therefore, I would definitely suggest looking towards investments which have very minimal risk of reducing in value, right? So one of my first few assets which I invested in was the ASB, right? So yeah, ASB is definitely one of the assets which I'll look at lah, right? And the final bit lah is this lah, once you already started investing, once you already start saving, you'll start seeing some extra money coming in, right? With a bit of extra time, I will definitely suggest to move towards a side hustle. I think a side hustle right now is very, very common. Very, very common, guys. I actually met more and more people in this community, right? That tells me that it's very common that they have two jobs, right? And I also met some people which have three jobs, right? And I did ask the person, I said, how is that even possible? How does someone have three jobs? So he tells me that he works full time. Then he has his, then he works another side hustle, right? And then finally at home, he has his online business. So that's his three jobs. That's his triple income. So I was like, whoa, okay, that's interesting, right? I think long story short, what I'm trying to say is this lah, if you have time, invest it. If you have money, invest it. If you have energy, invest it, right? I think the whole thing of it all is, I just shared with you the numbers. Inflation is relatively high. Inflation is something which is a reality, right? Not thinking about inflation will not solve the inflation problem, right? Not thinking about something will not solve it, right? The best way to actually solve a particular issue is to plan on how to solve it. Let me repeat this. This is very, very important. In order for us to succeed in anything, we need to plan to succeed, right? Or it's like this lah. If we want to write a paper for school, right? We need to plan what paper we have to write for school. We need to have an outline. We need to have a ranker. We need to do some research, and then from there, after planning, then we will execute our plans lah, right? If we do not plan, basically we just sit and just do free flow, right? High chances are the paper won't be the best paper. So if there's something more complicated, which is our retirement, right? Not planning for our retirement is basically planning to fail, lah, right? Like the old saying goes, lah. If we fail to plan, right, we plan to fail, right? if we fail to plan, we plan to fail. So basically, if we do not plan for something, if we just ignore it, I think most likely the time will come when we have to retire and we do not have any plans for our retirement. All of a sudden, it's like, wow, the reality is it's coming more and more to reality. And honestly, I've seen a fair bit of people which are in their retirement age, right? Struggling with this lah. So that's one of the reasons why I created this video, right? Just to, I guess, remind all of us lah, right? I know inflation. I know there's inflation. Yes, there's inflation. I know that things are difficult. Yes, I know that things are difficult. But honestly, if we plan things enough, right? And if we take the action early enough, definitely, we can actually succeed, right? The whole thing of it all is not give up, take the positive steps, and we can see positive results, right? With that, if there's any questions, please put it down. If not, for those future viewers, please put it down on the comment section so that I can help answer it in the future episodes, right? With that, good night, guys, and I hope that you found this very, very useful, right? All right, take care, guys. Bye.